Hello, my friends. Happy Friday to you. Connor Doobie here, host of the B2B Mentors podcast. Welcome. Please make sure you share this. Drop any comments, questions. If you're watching this after the fact, feel free to drop any comments and questions. And please go to iTunes, leave a 5-star review so others can find the show too. And we're also on all your other favorite podcast apps that you want to find us. Just look up B2B Mentors. By the way, if you haven't already, make sure you check out our 15-day 6-figure sales challenge. Okay, you're going to get some mentorship from me, some great information, and some accountability to add 6 figures to your sales pipeline, leveraging 15 days worth of steps. With that, I'm going to go ahead and bring my guest up, Ronjini. What's going on, my friend? Did I get the link to you in time? Were you able to share it, or you still need
Yes, I'm good. We've shared it.
It's always a scramble to get it out there. So
I like it. I'm used to, we're in PR. So in PR, we hustle and we do things really quickly and we're always panicking. So
yeah, it's always a pan. And when you're doing it alone too, right? That I used to do my podcast in a studio. I had someone to coordinate everything, press all the buttons and everything where I could just talk. Now, doing it through online, it's like, I got too many buttons to remember. So
right.
Well, cool. Well, with that, I guess speaking of PR and what we're here to talk about and provide some great insights and some mentorship, please brag about yourself a little bit. Give us a bit of background and what led you to where you're at in your career and your life today.
Sure. So I've been in the tech PR world for about 20 years. I started off, at a small agency, and I've kind of gone through big agencies. I've gone through number of different types of tech companies. So I started off working in the enterprise space and mobile and wireless. Then I played in video games a little bit. And then I landed, 10 years later, I landed in my own agency accidentally. 10 years ago, I started the Silver Telegram, which is a PR agency for technology brands. And we have done everything from enterprise SaaS platforms to crowdfunding campaigns on Kickstarter, Indiegogo, Start Engine, Fundable, to just really cool consumer gadgets. So right now, we mostly do a lot of media around technology brands that are doing kind of new, innovative things. We're working on some self-driving technologies. We're working on some smartphone gadgets, some low-tech clocks, audio companies. So we kind of work
low-tech clocks?
Low-tech clock. Yeah, we actually just launched this company on Kickstarter recently called One Clock, and they're like a minimalist designed clock that's supposed to wake you up better in the morning, and doesn't have any connectivity to your watch or to your phone or to anything. So kind of removing tech from the bedroom, which is so ironic because I work so hard at putting tech in people's hands. So we are really in the consumer tech space mostly. And then we're also now in cannabis space. So we've been working in the cannabis space for a couple of years, and working for companies that are growers, beverage companies, health and wellness, fitness. We do a lot of media relations.
Yeah. What is it that led you in from a personal perspective into the PR road versus being like a marketing agency or doing anything else? I mean, PR, marketing, kind of one and the same, kind of not. Actually, let's start there. How do you differentiate PR from marketing? I think that's probably a better place to start off.
Yeah, I was actually having this conversation with someone yesterday, and we were talking about how PR people, and I think marketing people too, hate to be put into the same bucket. Although now the lines are a little bit more blurry than they used to be. The public relations that I do is more traditional. So we work in the space of earned media. So we're working with journalists to write stories about news from companies that are hopefully, like industry changing stories. When we're talking about marketing, we're talking a little bit more about the paid model of marketing. So we're talking about advertising, we're talking about paid content marketing, we're talking about paid social media advertisement, maybe we're talking about SEO and Google AdWords and things like that. So all of those things actually fall into the marketing bucket. I think now things are shifting because of the way the media environment is shifting. Everyone's had to make some adjustments. So I know sometimes we work on social media strategy and programs, but most of the stuff that we do as a PR agency is earned or content creation versus paid things that we have to pay for advertising or paid advertising or marketing brochures. Because the way you speak about your brand in marketing versus PR is a little bit different. And I think that's the biggest thing. It's like in marketing, you're selling. In PR, you're really educating. So I want to say that's kind of the main focus.
And what does that mean in earned versus non-earned PR?
So earned would basically mean you're not paying for a placement. So you're working with a journalist to craft a story that's all unpaid. There's no money changing hands. And a paid placement is paid. I mean, you're basically buying ad space. Even if you create content that's educational, you're still buying that space to put your advertisement in or your content into. Versus when you're talking about earned, it's literally like someone's reviewing your product from a editorial standpoint, or they're publishing your news from an editorial standpoint. Means it's like really got that valid news value. It's more organic. So it's just a little bit different of way of positioning your brand and your messaging and your, people, I think again, lines are blurring, but people felt that PR was always more organic and authentic, where marketing, it's like really a function of sales. Now they're both kind of, they kind of blend into each other. We
intermingle quite a bit more.
Yeah. And you want your messages to resonate across your PR, marketing, social, because that way it lands better. Like people are hearing the same thing over and over again. And I think now marketing has gone to a direction that it's a lot more authentic versus like pushing sales, because people are so tired of getting sales pushed on them that, they just have a little better feel when people are educating them or really genuinely interested in, helping people. So I think that marketing has shifted a little bit more towards authenticity, and then PR has become a little bit more aggressive of like, hey, we're the first people to do this, and that's more on the sales side too. So they're kind of meeting in the middle somehow.
Yeah. Being published in Guinness Book of World Records for something, or, there's so many different, how many different avenues are there for PR nowadays?
Well, everything, if you see an article in Forbes, if you see something in Wall Street Journal, we work with TechCrunch, Mashable, The Verge, we work with Men's Fitness, we work with Shape Magazine. So we work to get all like the products that we work with. For example, we work with a headphone company, and they're a running headphone. And so we place them into the article, and someone has to submit those products to get them in there. They're not always just like discovered, somebody has to help the editors write these articles because there's so much stuff out there. So a good PR team can place you in the right place, find your target audience, and then put you in front of those people in that editorial organic way.
Makes a non-serendipitous seem serendipitous. That,
absolutely.
This influencer just so happens to be wearing this t-shirt or this product or drinking this beverage,
Yep. Yeah. And you see a list, like things in my bag, I know Cosmo has stuff like that, like things that are in your bag, your purse. And it's like a list of all these products. Well, someone put them there. They're not paid for, but they're also submitted by PR people like myself, who are submitting and kind of telling you, hey, this is why this product is cool. You should put it in the what's in your bag section or whatever. Or, when people are doing best running gear, someone is submitting all those products. And so that's what we do. We submit products to the right places. And not only just like product reviews, but we also help executives with thought leadership. So contributing content, writing articles. I just recently had an article published in Newsweek and Sifted where I talked about Clubhouse. So those are all earned pieces. You basically create the content and you submit it, and it goes through an editorial process. It's not a paid placement.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, the consumer products can be a little bit more sexier and fun in terms of PR. But if you're a IT company, cybersecurity, telecom, biotech, selling to pharmaceutical companies or whatever, what's the nuances in approach to PR on the B2B side versus consumer side?
So on the B2B side, it's the same principles, actually. You're just targeting to your demographic, right? So we're looking at industry trade publications. We work with an amazing ag tech company who works with farms and GMOs to identify insects and create data around entomology. And so obviously that's not a consumer play. It will affect the consumer at some point. But what we do is we really position them in the industry. So we are getting them into like Ag Tech Today and Farm Tech Magazine, things like that. And I'm kind of making the names up as I go, but it's kind of that thing was where when you're talking about B2B, you, again, still have to find where your customers are, because everybody has customers that they have to find. And so we'll either put your product in there, and there's always like, if you think about a SaaS product, there's always like, the best SaaS products of 2021, or like the best CRM management tools, like same kind of concept. Those things are submitted by PR people. The PR person has to help highlight those features and get that product reviewed. However, when it comes to B2B also, we talk a lot about thought leadership and executive placement. And so we take our executives, find key topics that are relevant in the industry, and really help position them as industry leaders. Like, this person is an expert at this, fintech or reg tech or whatever the topic might be. And this is the kind of cause that they're championing. Right now, we're working with an amazing gaming company that's really focused on enterprise gaming. And so we're talking about the opportunity for gaming within the enterprise and how people's marketing strategies are shifting to kind of incorporate virtual worlds and video games and into their marketing and into their sales. So that's like just a different kind of angle, but we have to position our CEO there. We're putting him into these thought leadership positions where we're using that concept and explaining it to people so they kind of get it. And then they'll be like, oh yeah, that sounds really interesting. I love to incorporate that into our marketing or our business development or how we're, working with customers. So it's all of the principles are pretty much the same. It's just, where does your customer live? And then we have to go find that and tell the story in the way that they would understand.
How do you assess that and make sure there's not a mismatch in where the customer is living? Like, if I were to go do this on my own and try to bring my PR efforts in-house, how would I go about, what steps would you recommend for that?
Well, first, I think the first thing is you have to, hopefully as a business, you're gauging what you're reading. Like, what publications are you reading? Also, your customers are probably reading potentially similar publications. However, there's a media kit for every outlet. So you can go to a publication, because this does happen. A mismatch does happen. People come to us and it's like, oh, we need to be in Entrepreneur magazine. I'm like, well, entrepreneurs read Entrepreneur. Is that who you're trying to target? Who are you trying to reach? If you're trying to reach your customer, maybe Fast Company is the way to go. So, one of the things is I've been doing this personally for 20 years. My team has a lot of experience. So like, we kind of know where people live, but you can easily find this if you were going to go look at the media kit. And they usually outline like, this is a magazine for mid-level managers or executives. And it kind of gives you a direction of who the audience is. So the media kit is giving you a really nice indication or clear indication of the audience of the outlet. And then they also tell you about the traffic. So it tells you like how much traffic you're getting. So if we're trying to push a product for sales, we look for high trafficked websites because we want to push more traffic to it, especially when we're doing things like crowdfunding. But when we're looking at thought leadership, we want to position our experts really acutely in a place where their customers are potentially reading the article or looking for more information. And so you look at that media kit and the demographics of the media kit, and that can actually help you discover that. We've been doing this for a long time, so it's kind of innate at this point.
Right. And so if I am trying to build this, I don't have the budget to hire a PR company.
Yeah.
What steps can I follow? What are some best practices? Like if you got to break it down into a roadmap from A to Z to be successful at my own in-house PR, what steps would you recommend?
Well, first thing first is try to take a look at your website, like from a customer's perspective, because I think a lot of times websites are not created in a way that I feel like there's a lot of holes in many websites, especially on the B2B side. So you're assuming the customer already knows what they want when they got there. At least on your homepage, that's not true. So make sure you're filling in those gaps. And make sure that you're defining some of your key industry terms somewhere, because from an SEO perspective, that's great. But then also from a PR educational perspective, that's really good. So writing blogs is like an excellent way to kind of start that education process, right? You want to educate the customer why they need you. And this is kind of like sales marketing 101. But it also helps support your PR efforts. And then the first thing I would do, and I recommend this to a lot of people, is just like identify like maybe 5 outlets that you think your customers would read. 5 publications, online, print, whatever.
So just to pause you real quick, you'd go straight for publications as the starting place.
Yeah, because I think that will inform what you do next, right? So I would start looking at the publications, and then from there, and most things I do is online. So it's a lot of Google searching, a lot of research. But what I would say is from there, Google or search your competitors in those publications and see if they live there. And kind of like, I'm a big proponent of like, don't reinvent the wheel. Sometimes somebody's already greased the wheel for you a little bit.
Right.
You could just improve on it. So go to those publications, see if your competitors are there. And if they are, that's a key indicator that you should probably be there too. See what they're talking about and what is your value proposition that positions you as a better fit for whatever customer, or different. Maybe it's not always better. Maybe it's just different. Maybe it's like just a different niche that you have. So find those 5 publications, search your competitor, and start building now, and obviously read the stories, but then you could start building your own narrative of like, okay, this is how I want to position us. And then the next step would be to reach out to the potential, the writer of that article. And usually you can find that in the masthead or the contact us page. You can usually find the information of the editor or the writer who wrote that, but do your research first. It's really like what we do a lot is research and storytelling. That's like kind of the main components of PR. So think of that as your base, and then you could kind of push that out to wherever you see fit. But we often use a competitive audit to help us get started so that we can see who's out there, if there's anyone out there. So, I mean, sometimes we do a competitive audit and like the competitors haven't done anything, which is amazing because that gives you an open playing field.
An audit of like their website or how they're actually doing
of how they're interacting with the media. Yeah, got it. Of how they're positioning themselves with the media, because that means that they might be doing sales, marketing, SEO, but they may not be doing PR, which is that earned coverage piece, which also means there's that gap in education is there. And so you can fill that gap. You could jump in and fill that gap. And it happens quite often, frankly. Like we come up with companies that have like a really maybe substantial competitors, but maybe sometimes when they're so big, they don't feel the need to educate their consumers. So they don't have a lot of those placements because maybe their brand name is really big. But if you fill in that gap of like thought leadership, then that really puts you as a person that, you know, creates credibility. Like it gives me the opportunity to be like, oh, this person is telling me these things. He's educating me. He's a credible source. I like the way he talks. I like his personality. You know, like you kind of discover things about the potential customer or client. And I think, I mean, as we all know, like relationships are a big deal too. So like how you interact with people, each company is going to have a different way of interacting. And so you have to find that culture fit as well. So you're listening to their voice through these like articles potentially, and then you're saying, oh, this guy is great because he's giving me all this information, and the competitors, they're not saying anything. So there's a lot of opportunity when you're filling in gaps like that, and there's a lot of opportunity when you're saying something different. And so we try to get 100%. Our clients to say something a little bit different, and you know, something that will trigger or spark some kind of, you know, interest.
It's not just a sales pitch. With the digitization, I know you're still going through the list here, but to pause you again real quick, with the digitization of media and publications, are you seeing much more, number one, long form content, video content, and audio content? Like, say, for example, this podcast has some great golden nuggets in it. What about taking this podcast recording and placing it in a public? Are you seeing that as a PR opportunity?
Absolutely. I do recommend podcasts to people if they're comfortable. I mean, that's the one thing. It's like you have to jump over some hurdles, some personal hurdles, I think. I know when I first started a podcast, I was really nervous about it. And I don't know how you felt when you started this one, but you have to be willing to kind of go that extra step if you wanted to do a podcast. I think a podcast is amazing. Great idea. Puts a face to a name. You can feel the energy almost too through video. So there's that opportunity. So yes, I definitely think digital content is the way to go. There is a lot of long form content. So the way I work around that is trying to make it as useful as possible. Don't just make someone read this like long dissertation, but like what is the nuggets that we're going to pull out of that? Like make sure you tell a story and then give them something to do. That's always my thing. I am like always educating and teaching and trying to like say, okay, well, this is what you could take out of this story. So I feel like, yes, long form content is great. Have some action items from that. I'm type A, so everything's action for me. And then, podcast, if you're comfortable, even if you're not comfortable, try it. It's like so easy to get something started that you can just test the waters. Of course, with podcasts, I always tell, people who've asked me about podcasting, I'm like, you kind of have to hang in there for a little bit. It's not always like, doesn't always kick off real quickly.
I mean more taking this content of our conversation. Let's say, I publish this up and there's no list, like nobody's listening right now, but we have this content. Could we take this and put it in and submit it into B2B marketing magazine, for example, and write an article? And then also this video is attached, but this video's, kind of long form. Are you seeing much more of that in the digital media space? And if maybe you aren't even as skilled at writing articles, but you're okay hopping on video and doing stuff like this?
Excuse me. I think it's...
I don't know if I say bless you. I don't know if that was a sneeze or a cough. So
yeah, that was a sneeze. Sorry.
Okay. God bless you.
I think, you could easily turn this into an article and we could pull out the nuggets from it and turn it into an article. But I don't see a lot of like, I'm sure there's some publications that do video submissions. I'm not seeing a lot of that because I think they reserve video and things like this that are really high impact and direct for their own kind of internal content. Right. So I would see that like they might have like a newscast and then they might re-report something that we've submitted in a written form. But I don't know that something like this would be kind of resubmitted as a video content. Some places might. I just don't see it happening everywhere. But written content, yes, for sure. Like we could easily translate this into a transcript, clean it up a little bit, and submit it somewhere as an article for sure.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
But I'm also finding that people are a lot more engaged on social media and LinkedIn and things like that. So creating, I mean, this is something we explored a long time ago that I think is coming to fruition now, but like almost having your own editorial team, right? Of like creating and pushing content that's authentic and original to your brand, but also almost like a media house. That I think the brands are taking that on, not the media. It's not the other way. Like what you're saying is like, we would submit to the media. I think brands are bringing that into their own place. And I know
they're
like
becoming their own media.
They're becoming their own media. And so people are like subscribing to that media.
Yeah.
So people have an opportunity to become their own media outlet. I think it's that direction versus the other way.
And I think it's an absolute necessity too nowadays.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. You have to, if you're not, I was telling people this like last year, right as the pandemic hit, and people were like, what do we do for marketing? Like, is it bad form? Like, what should we be doing? And I was saying like, look, if you're not saying anything, then nobody can see you. So you've got to be vocal. You've got to be present, whether it's just commenting on other people's posts or putting out a one-line quote, whatever it is, like be there, because if you're not saying anything, you don't exist.
Yeah. Better to show up imperfect than try to worry about being perfect and not consistent.
And never show up. Yeah.
Never show up at all.
Absolutely.
Meanwhile, your competitors are showing up and they're testing 20 different messages in 1 week while you're just trying to focus on one thing a month.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
And so many people do that. So many people do that.
Any other strategies or tips that we should definitely touch on while we're winding things down here?
Yeah. I mean, there's so many, but I think the core of it is sticking to your mission and values, especially in these days. A lot of people are revisiting that. They are tying all their content to their company's value proposition. And I think that's really important because people are now actually, I feel like, looking at that a little bit more. Like, hey, what kind of company is this really? They're looking at like the background of the company. They're looking at the personality of the company. Like, who are these people that we're getting into business with? So I would just factor that into everything that you do, B2B, B2C, whatever. I think understand that people are going to look at you from a lot of different angles, and that, you know, there's always a different fit for different people. There's enough business out there for all of us. So I think the thing is staying true to your brand and your value proposition is just as important when you're doing PR, marketing, sales. Like that should resonate across like all the different channels. And I think everyone will find their match as we kind of explore networking. I think staying open is really the message there.
Right. Any other purposes or people you want to shout out before we wrap up?
Well, no, not really. Not really. I mean, I always shout out my whole like team, but I think just kind of stay healthy for now and stay open, be creative, like get outside of your comfort zone is really, I'm more of like a, hey guys, like try something different. So that's what I would say is try something different. Especially right now, there's only opportunities. So.
And you are different, which is why I had you on this podcast. And you always bring great energy to our calls. And I'm super excited to see what we could possibly do together on some PR. I got this whole beautiful PR machine, but I haven't launched it out myself yet. So definitely going to take some of your tips.
We're going to have you on the podcast. So we do have a PR podcast that's like doing tips and tricks on like easy things you could do. So check out the podcast. It's called the PR Playbook Podcast. It's on, all the channels.
Yeah, we got that. We're going to be sick of each other by the end of today. Yeah. But I've kind of stumbled into it organically, and I'm like, oh, this is PR. I'm PRing, I guess. This I guess this is me PRing.
Yeah.
So
totally. Yeah, that's what it is. That's what it is. It's fun after you get used to it a little bit. It's a little uncomfortable, but then once you get in the flow, you're good.
100%. Best way for people to find you, follow you, get into contact.
LinkedIn, I mean, my information, if you Google me, like I am not hard to find. So Google me, or LinkedIn is actually probably the easiest way. I check LinkedIn pretty regularly. You can email me, Ronjini at thesilvertelegram.com. I am pretty much like an open book. So yeah.
Cool. Well, thank you, Ronjini. I really appreciate the time. Excited to do your podcast later this afternoon as well. And all of you, make sure you go give her a follow. Make sure you go check out her website. Check out what their incredible team is doing. Stick around for one quick second while we wrap up here. And also, all of you guys, if you want more B2B Mentors episodes, we're on all your favorite podcast apps. You can find us anywhere. B2B Mentors. Please do me a tiny favor. Go to iTunes. Give us a 5-star review. It helps other people to find the show too. Share this out with your friends, your family, your people. And with that, I'll see you guys on the other side.
Yeah.